Baby, wouldn't it be nice if we both spoke the same language? I could understand your troubles and you know mine, and we could be together all the time if we both spoke the same language. Baby, no sería lindo si nos dos habláramos la misma lengua. Podría entender tus problemas y sabrías los míos.
Hello and welcome to Whoever You Thought You Were, You're a Jew, a TV program that helps us try to develop more interest and faith in this and less in our friend the golden calf here. However, today's show, which is number 12, that's 12 out of 13 by the way, this is our penultimate show, second to last show. Maybe I should take this opportunity to thank everybody who's been watching every week. Anyway, today's show is about money. So our good friend the golden calf here, this is going to be his day. Here's a little money here. I shined up some pennies just for the occasion of this show. I would have preferred to use some gold coins as props, but I don't have any. Now, gold is the thing that most people love above all things in the world. It's what people live for, on the whole, and it often ends up being what people die for. I think we all know in our hearts that the Bible makes it abundantly clear that you cannot serve God and mammon. The Old Testament says it in so many words. The New Testament says it explicitly. Everybody seems to know that it's true and nobody really disputes it, and yet we all live for money. It's almost like we're on a treadmill and we can't stop. We just can't stop. There's a force that pushes us forward. And everything seems to be linked to money. Everything. We all believe that nothing in this world will move until somebody pays for that to happen. If there's any one thing that I want to impress upon you, it's that money is not really real. That is, a lot of people say, there's no God. Come on, you can't see him, you can't smell him, you can't touch him. But money is something real. You can see it, you can touch it. But is it really real? I want to start out by talking about a concept I'm very fond of. One day without money. I want you to imagine that the world went one day without money. And here's how it would go. We could start right here in this office. I'm a physician. In our one day without money, all my patients would come in to get treated just as they always do, and I wouldn't charge them. They'd get free treatment. Now, of course, that could be a problem for me. For example, if that day was the day that my rent was due, I wouldn't be taking any money in. So how am I going to pay my rent? But remember, this is one day without money. So on that day, there is no rent. So I just come to work, I treat my patients, and I use the office, but I don't pay any rent. How about supplies? I need supplies to treat patients. But on our one day without money, the supplies are delivered and there's no charge. Well, if there's no charge, how are the manufacturers going to be able to support their enterprise? And the answer is, all their raw materials are delivered without charge. The truckers deliver them and they don't get paid. How are you going to eat? Well, you go to the grocery store and pick up some food and you eat. The grocery store doesn't pay any rent that day because that's one day without money, remember. He doesn't have to pay the farmers to deliver food to him because the farmers aren't getting paid. The farmers grow food and they give it away. Now, farmers have needs. They need clothing. If on that particular day they need clothing, they go out and buy it, but when they go up to the cash register, there's no transaction. You could even have on One Day Without Money people going down to Wall Street and pushing papers around. It seems kind of silly, doesn't it? And yet if that's what people really want to do, well, hell, let them do it. On that day they push as many papers as they want, only no money changes hands. Now if you think about this, you have to admit that if every single person in the world did exactly the same thing tomorrow that they did today, the world would be exactly the same tomorrow as it is today. And if they did that same thing without money, then the world would go one day without money. You have to admit it. If everybody in the world was willing to do the same thing tomorrow that they did today, only without money, the world would go one day without money. So how can you tell me that money makes the world go round? That's obviously not true. So what's the fallacy here? Well, of course, the fallacy is that hardly anybody wants to do the same thing tomorrow that they did today. People want more money tomorrow than they have today. They want more sex tomorrow than they have today. They don't want to do any work tomorrow if they don't have to. Everybody wants somebody else to do their work for them. That's the problem. People don't want to do anything. So I'm not necessarily suggesting that everybody should go any number of days without money, but I want you to understand that if it were possible to go one day without money, you could go more than one day without money. In fact, you could get rid of the money altogether. In fact, it kind of makes one wonder what the money is really for. Now, there's something I want to tell you about money. In the United States, the only lawful currency is gold. Although we don't have any gold because our gold was literally stolen by the Federal Reserve Bank. If you look in the Old Testament, you can find out and you can deduce from information in the Old Testament that the purchasing power of gold was the same in ancient Israel as it is today. That's a pretty amazing statement. The value of paper money in terms of how many dollars it takes to buy a bar of gold, well, that just fluctuates up and down wildly. But the gold never changes. So gold seems to have an absolute value. But does it really have any value? Let's take a look. First of all, let's look at some simple statistics. In the year 1775, the year of the American Revolution, gold was $20 an ounce. In the year 1933, when Franklin D. Roosevelt was president, gold was $40 an ounce. That's not much inflation for the better part of 2 centuries. In fact, our currency was almost completely stable. But look at 1973, $800 an ounce. What the hell happened? I just told you that the value of gold is very stable. Let's take a look at this graphically. Here's a little graph. Here's the American Revolution as 1900. Here's today. Look what happened from the American Revolution up into this century. The price of gold was very stable, and it shot up, and it's still hovering around 400. Now what happened was the Federal Reserve Bank in 1933 took all the gold out of the United States, which was not lawful, but they didn't need law because they have power, and they wanted gold, which I guess is what everybody thinks they want. So they took all the gold. Somewhere around here, Lyndon Johnson took all the silver and gave it to the Federal Reserve Bank, so this country has no gold and silver. So its currency has no anchor, it just shoots up. People don't trust it anymore and they want more. They want more currency for the same goods because they don't perceive that the currency has any value. It's all in perception. Now here's a map of the world. I want to show you something that you may have never thought about before. When you think about it, you'll realize that there's a certain amount of gold in the world, and of course everybody wants it. Just imagine that in the near future, all the gold that the world has been mined. Now that's not very difficult to imagine. I mean, the whole world's not made of gold, there's only so much. And there will come a time when it's all been mined. So I'm going to take a handful of television gold, actually pennies, and let's throw it down on the map of the world. Oh, we lost one. Let's just imagine that this is all the gold in the world. There you go. And imagine that this is the time at which all the gold has been mined. There isn't any more, and this is it. And the thing I want you to ask yourself is, where is that gold going to end up? That is, who is going to have it? Is it going to be equally distributed the way we have it now, so that everybody has a certain amount? I don't think so. When you think about it, what would be the point of having everybody having the same amount? Wouldn't that be kind of like the same as everybody having none? I mean, unless there's differences between people, then what's the point of having it at all? It would kind of be like everything would be an even trade. No, it's not going to be evenly distributed. It might end up something like this. There might be a couple of people, say, in South America who have an awful lot, maybe a couple of people in North America, maybe a couple of people in Asia. So this is meant to represent now a different way of looking at it, where a very small number of people may each have lots and lots of gold, and everybody else is going to have very, very little. And the people who are going to have lots of gold are obviously going to be the people who grab the most, so that all the gold is going to get concentrated into a few hands. Now, if there isn't any more, then there can't be any more money. So if you aren't one of those people who have lots and lots of gold, then you're going to have very little, and it's going to be practically impossible for you to get any more, unless you can steal it from these people. Now, I'm not proposing anything in particular. It's just that if you've never thought about it, you should realize that the amount of gold in the world is finite. And who is going to have it is the question. Well, now that we've talked about how valuable gold appears to be, I'm going to show you another system of money where there is no gold. This is our system, the American system. Our system is kind of like a game of three-card Monte. So I'm going to show you something, and you're going to have to watch very carefully because things are going to move pretty quickly. And I'm going to show you how a bogus financial system works, the American financial system. Now, here's the American people. And let's say the American people call up the government over here, United States, and say, "Government, we want some uranium." That's the chemical symbol for uranium. "We want some uranium for our nuclear power plants so that we can have more electricity and be warm in the winter. Would you please buy us some uranium so that we can run our nuclear reactors?" And the government says, "Sure." Government calls up this uranium dealer, and he's got this big chunk of uranium. It's the size of a mountain. It's for sale for $1 billion. Now the government, in case you didn't know it, has been bankrupt since about 1933. Government has no money. So here's how it works. The United States calls up its dear friends at the Federal Reserve Bank, the world bankers who control everything. These guys, by the way, are not Americans. At least 80% of them aren't Americans. And they say, "We need $1 billion. So the Fed turns on its printing presses, in essence, and prints $1 billion there. This note here, if you want to call it that, this represents $1 billion. Now, where did they get that $1 billion from? Well, they have paper and they have ink, so that's where they got it from. In other words, it didn't come from anything, they just printed it. And what gives them the right to do that? Might makes right. The answer is they just do it, and if you don't like it, you can pound salt. Now they take that $1 billion, watch carefully, and they lend it to America. Notice I said lend. And notice, by the way, there's no gold in this system, it's just paper. They lend that $1 billion to America. Now America has $1 billion, except it owes it to the Fed. So we still have $1 billion. Now America makes a deal with the uranium dealer and buys the uranium on behalf of the people. Okay? Now the people have their uranium, and the people are happy. They charge up their nuclear reactors and they stay warm. Now the uranium dealer gets paid. So now we have $1 billion over here. So far, so good. Now the American people have to go to work to pay income tax, because that's where this debt is going to be repaid from, your taxes. The average American works from January till May, 5 months a year, to pay his taxes. So at the end of May, you have $1 billion here which you've worked for and you've earned. And you have to pay it to the government in income tax. That's funny. Now we got $2 billion. Now remember, the government can't keep that money. It owes it to the Fed. So the government pays the Fed back plus interest. And we're not even going to talk about the interest. We're just talking about the principal. And now the deal is done. The people have their uranium. The dealer has his $1 billion. That seems fair. America has nothing. And the Federal Reserve Bank has $1 billion. Now, there's only one thing wrong with this. Where did they get that $1 billion from? That's funny. They didn't do anything. They didn't work. Well, the answer is they got it from nowhere. They just printed it. Now, if I were to get jealous and say they have no right to do that, wouldn't I be coveting my neighbor's property? Yes, I would. So I'm not going to say that. We, the people, got our uranium, so what the hell right have we got to complain? The uranium dealer got his $1 billion. He's not complaining. America started off with nothing and ended up with nothing, so they have no right to complain. So what is it to us if the Fed, after engineering this enormous deal, gets $1 billion? And the answer is it oughtn't be anything either. We should mind our own business, except the fallacy in this is that there's now $2 billion on the table that weren't there before. Now, most people don't know this, but it's a universally acknowledged fact of economics that whenever more paper money is pumped into circulation, the prices of goods go up. The relationship between the so-called money supply and the cost of goods is an exact arithmetic, mathematical relationship. It's a known fact, which is absolutely true, that if you pump more bills, more dollars into the circulation, all the prices of goods are going to go up. You're going to get inflation. And the inflation in the United States is fixed by this money printing habit of the Federal Reserve Bank. And that's why every year in this country, without fail, you have 5% inflation. It's absolutely automatic, and it cannot be avoided. And what that means for you is that every time, for example, you struggle and break your bones to get, say, a small 3 or 4 or even 5% raise if you're lucky, that means that 1 year later you have even less than you had when you started with. So you see what the problem is with this system? It's that every year you get poorer and these guys get richer. And the reason they get richer is because they have all your gold, so their value never changes while yours is constantly diminishing. Furthermore, they're lending you money based on that gold, so they're getting interest on the gold, and you're paying interest. This is a miserable system. But there's other things we have to talk about now. This is not primarily intended to be a show about economics, and frankly, I'm not sure I understand money myself. When you think about it too much, you start to go nuts. This is a show designed to get people to stop thinking about this and to start thinking more about God. So the question we really want to ask is, what does God want us to do about money? So to start to get a handle on that, I want to show you this sign, which I held up weeks ago. It says, all men are brothers, love your neighbor as yourself, and do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And this is where the real wealth is. And I'm not kidding when I say real wealth. Whether people have the ability to tap into this wealth, considering how evil people are in their basis, whether people have that ability remains to be seen, but I believe that they do. Now, let's talk about this a little bit, because I'm talking about real wealth. The admonition among the Jews with respect to this golden rule, not this one over here, let's move him out of the way, I'm tired. The real golden rule, the Jews say, love thy neighbor as thyself. Do you think that has anything to do with money? Let's hold off on that. About 2500 BC or thereabouts, Confucius in China was asked, is there any single saying that one can act upon all day and every day? And this is the answer he gave. Perhaps the saying about consideration, never do to others what you would not like them to do to you. Hey, that's the same rule. Now, there was a fellow named Hillel who all Jews have heard of. He was a great Torah commentator. Hillel said, whatever is hateful to thee, do it not unto thy fellow. This is the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. We keep hearing this same message over and over again. But what does it mean? Finally, we get to Jesus. And if you're a Christian, you know this one. Jesus taught his followers, therefore, all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Now this is a show about money, and if you want to know what that has to do about money, what that has to do with money, I'll tell you. Basically what the Golden Rule says is that if you want something, you have to give it, not take it. And that's very different than the way things are right now in the world. Right now, all the wealth in the world has already been taken. I showed you all those things about money, basically because I just wanted you to think a little bit about it. Each of those things is something that I'd thought about and was kind of astonished when I realized it, so I thought I'd share it with you. But really, the truth of the matter is that the wealth of the world is in the hands of a small group of international bankers, and they're not going to let it go, and you're not going to take it away from them. Believe me, you're not going to take it away from them. They have a lot of power, and you have no power. But there is something you can do. There is a way that the forces of international greed can be beaten, and it involves turning back to God, and it involves particularly dwelling on and thinking very deeply about the meaning of this golden rule, because I'm telling you that that's where the gold really is. It says you should do to other people what you want done to yourself, and I want you to think about what that means. What is it that you want from other people? In order to really get a handle on the answer to that question, which seems like a simple question, but it is really quite subtle when you think about it. In order to get a handle on that question, I want you to think about television commercials for the moment. I want you to think about television commercials. What is it that people advertise? They advertise low prices. And what does that mean? It means basically they're going to give you something for nothing. Either, for example, they're going to give you a whole car but only charge you half the price. You know how it is. They'll say, lowest price. Get it for half price. We'll beat all the competition. You've all seen commercials and you know what they promise. They always promise that they're either going to give you the same product for a lower price, or they're going to give you for the same price you'd pay elsewhere more of the same product. It's always getting more and paying less. Commercials also talk about quality. Some of them say that for the same price they're going to give you a higher quality product, and when you think about what that means, it means that for the same amount of money they're going to give you more product. So commercials all say the same thing. Either they say they're going to give you the same product for a lower price, or for the same price you'd pay elsewhere, they're going to give you more product. Now ask yourself this: what would be the ultimate reality along those lines? Clearly, the ultimate reality would be if you give somebody the finest possible product and you don't charge any price. What would be so terrible about that? Suppose, for example, that I, as a physician, treated patients and I did my best to take care of them, and I didn't charge them any price. Would that be such a terrible thing? In return, those same patients could provide me with their service, whatever that is. If, for example, they were in the furniture business, they could give me the best furniture they had available and charge me nothing for it. I'm not really talking about a barter system. I'm talking about everybody doing their best and doing so without regard to whether they get paid or not. It's kind of like what I talked about in the beginning, that one day without money business. This system would turn the world into a paradise. Of course, there is something wrong with the plan, which is that if this plan were enacted, a lot of people would stop working, and those who kept working would have to bear the slack. That's what's wrong with the system. We are not ready for this system yet, but we might be soon. I think that's all the time we're going to have today. I don't know if I've really proven anything to you, but I want to tell you in closing that I've thought a lot about money, and I've come to the conclusion that the real golden rule is the golden rule, and not the one they bat around on Wall Street where they say, he who has the gold makes the rules. I don't buy that. I think the real golden rule, the one enunciated by Jesus Christ and by all the prophets of yesteryear, I think that's the real golden rule. and it's something we've never lived up to. If we could find a way to live up to it, this world would be a paradise. Please tune in next week. It's going to be our final program, and at that point I'm going to give you my idea as to what the New World Order really should be. I call it the New World Order. I hope to see you next week. Thanks for tuning in, and goodbye.
Just one cure. Focus on the one thing that I'm sure of. Baby, wouldn't it be nice if we both spoke the same language? I could understand your troubles and you know mine, and we could be together all the time if we both spoke the same language. If we both spoke the same language. If we both spoke the same